we've got Mike Zavet. He's the CEO of Hyperion Exchange, a new crypto exchange that is part of the new crypto economy, and he's one of the most knowledgeable guys in the space. Also, we're going to wrap up the market with Stevie Meisner, formerly one of Canada's best-known small-cap fund managers. He's probably one of the most colorful characters in the Bay Street mix. He'll join us about halfway through the show. And then at 4:20, we'll have Alan Brockstein, who is the first chartered financial analyst to cover the cannabis space in the United States. He'll be here at 4:20 Eastern. That is guaranteed to be an extremely enlightening conversation. But right now, I'm joined with Mike Zavet, CEO of Hyperion. Mike, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, Mike, let's talk about Hyperion a bit. What exactly is the exchange all about?
So Hyperion is a very unique exchange offering in that it's not only a classical utilities cryptocurrency exchange, it actually is a hybridized exchange, which includes the plan to list securities on the blockchain. This is a space that's been evolving over the last few months or even years, but more so it's accelerated. Now the SEC has begun to take steps to recognize securities and securities on the blockchain. In other words, digital securities.
So are you securitizing, like fractionalizing securities?
What we are actually doing is hosting security tokens. So there are a number of companies now that are beginning to do issuance for securities. And what they're doing is instead of doing what classically is a note like paper securities, they are doing a digital security. And this is much like equities or possibly revenue streams or other financial products. Except
an ICO?
They are ICOs, but they're security ICOs. So we like to call them STOs. And perhaps that name will evolve as well.
Okay, great. That's all we need is another anagram.
That's right.
And so STO, securitized security token.
Offering, that's right.
Okay, so how does that comply with securities laws currently?
So there are a number of ways of going about an STO, but essentially what we're looking to do is work with the regulators to find a way to be completely compliant while still offering these new and unique vehicles. So we're seeing is in the States a lot of Reg D offerings coming out as STOs. People are working on Reg A Plus offerings, Reg S1. So there's going to be very unique offerings coming out, and a lot of them are sort of based on traditional securities offerings with the added bonus of them being on the blockchain, being in an immutable ledger, and being very dynamic.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so does this mean that do you see these securitized token offerings replacing ICOs or replacing IPOs?
One day, I think that's the dream, is that we are kind of gunning for the IPOs. Now, with the classic ICOs, the utility tokens, so to speak, I think that a lot of those companies are hoping that they can remain as just that, utilities. Because with the added securities aspect, you're talking about more regulation. It's much more scrutinized and stringent.
Right.
So hopefully there will be a world where all three of those products exist.
Right. Okay, so then how do you guys make money? And are you planning to become a public entity? Is this an investment play for Canadian investors?
That could be a possibility. We did do a financing round, just a seed round to start, where we raised about $8 million. Right now, we are building out the company and the software, hoping to go live in about 100 days. Now, our business model is mixed between subscription fees from the tokenized offerings as well as from the users' transaction fees, much like any other exchange that exists today.
Okay, so at this point, there's no risk. You're not running the gray zone where it's like this. You're not offering securities.
We are not ourselves offering securities, but we are actually licensed to sell securities. So in the United States, we've just locked down a broker-dealer and an ATS license, which is an alternative trading system license. Now in Canada, we just applied for our MSB, which will lead us into our ATS and broker-dealer here as well.
Wow, that's very cool. So then, does this? I'm trying to wrap my head around. I mean, if you're on both sides of the border, does this kind of dissolve the border between, it used to be if you were going to raise money from Canadian investors, you had to have a glide path onto a Canadian exchange, and you had to specifically not offer securities in the U.S. and vice versa. Is this going to kind of change all that and make it sort of more globalized?
To be honest, that's what we're hoping. We're hoping the cryptocurrencies will start to break down borders and geographical limitations and allow investors from across the pond even invest at one point or another. We are targeting eventually Asian markets and kind of have our sights set on the entire world. Right now, of course, we have to follow current securities laws, so we are limited by geography, but we are hoping that cryptocurrencies will change that.
No kidding. The cryptocurrencies are sort of in a state of, they're in a state of flux, I guess is for want of a better word. There's a lot of sort of skepticism as to its ability to be representative of a currency when volatility is so rampant within the space. Do you think that volatility is going to sort of narrow down over time and settle out?
I do think it will taper off, and I think that even now with the volatility we're seeing, it's not as bad as the early days. If you were around 5 years ago watching Bitcoin fluctuations, they were quite a bit more severe. So I think it's starting to happen, and as the institutions get involved, you'll see even more stability be entering the space. I was just at Consensus very recently, and in the early days of going to conferences, there was a number of enthusiasts showing their products and new ideas. Well, now we have Microsoft, IBM, Fidelity, Citibank. All of them were present, and they were making it very clear that they are taking interest in the space.
Wow, no kidding, eh? So then, if you were to become a so how soon till we could actually participate in one of the offerings?
That's hard to comment on right now because we're still waiting on some guidance from the OSC and from the SEC on the other side of the border. That being said, we're hoping to launch with utility tokens as soon as 3 months from now.
Really?
Yeah.
Very intriguing.
Got about a 100-day timeline.
Yeah, no kidding. So now the ICOs that I've seen, guys are raising other cryptocurrencies.
That's right.
Instead of cash. And so as a enterprise raising capital to launch a business, there's a lot that you can do with crypto reserves now, but there's a lot you can't do without cash. So how do those companies access cash if they've raised a ton of Ether or a ton of Bitcoin?
Well, nowadays, with the sheer size of the cryptocurrency market, there's a lot of liquidity with Bitcoin and Ethereum. So the truth is that a lot of these companies, even when they're raising substantial amounts, and I've seen companies raise upwards of 100 million in Ethereum or Bitcoin, it's very easy for them to liquidate.
Yeah.
It's not like it was in the early days.
Okay, so it's not. So can you, for example, could you sell $15 million worth of Bitcoin in a day without moving the price?
Absolutely.
Really?
I could see more than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Very interesting. So from where you sit, is the future of securities and capital raising all about the crypto economy?
I believe it will be, to be honest. I mean, this is an immutable ledger. It's programmable. It's just a more efficient way of doing business. And the truth is that the technology is in its infancy, relatively, but it's growing, and I think everyone's starting to take notice.
Okay. Do you think that the OSC is, is up to speed on all of this, and is, I've heard that they're doing all kinds of things to accommodate the crypto economy and moving to, embrace it as much as they can. From where you sit, are they up to speed? Are they executing on that?
So far, I have seen they've been pretty responsive with us. To be honest, I think that everyone is still learning, and regulators are very diligent, as they have to be. So it'll take some time, but there's an effort, and that's positive.
Yeah. Wow. All right, let's leave it there for now. That's great, Mike.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, we'll come back to you in due course and follow up. Thanks again.
Pleasure. Thank you.